Welcome to r/Tales from the Front Desk, where an entitled couple pretends to have a fake baby in order to get free stuff. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. You cannot kick us out, we have a baby with us. No, you don't. This is a tale from about a year ago when I was working as a duty manager at another hotel. We were a small hotel in a CBD location, part of an international chain. The chain ranged from budget to semi-luxury depending on which property you went to, so we had an interesting mix of guests come in. There also was no central reservations, so bookings were always handled at property level. Since I was a duty manager, supervising reservations for the hotel was part of my job and I was a stickler for rules and policies being followed. One night I had a call from a rather crass gentleman that wanted to book a room for him and his young family. He kept stressing over and over during the reservation process that they had a baby with them. Not really asking for a cot or anything, just saying they had a baby. I'm like, whatever, here are the rooms and rates we have, yada yada yada. At the tail end of the booking process, he says he wants to use cash for his stay. That is fine. I tell him he will need to pay the full accommodation total on arrival plus $100 per night for a refundable bond plus valid photo so we can take a copy. It is either all of this or a hold on a credit card. He says yeah, that's fine, yada yada, as long as he can use cash. At the end, I tell him he will receive a confirmation via email shortly after, and since it contains important info, to let us know if he does not receive it within 24 hours so we can try again. I make a point of manually editing his confirmation to include the policy on cash plus bond plus photo ID, so there's no wiggle room for him on arrival if he conveniently forgets everything I told him over the phone. I send it off and hear nothing further. Fast forward to their arrival day, a man, a woman and a heavily laden pram arrive at the front desk to check in with me. We start the arrival process and I see the notes that I, myself, had made on the booking regarding the cash payment. I will be me, crass gentleman will be CG. Me, so you were wanting to pay for your stay with cash, is that correct? CG,
Yes.
me, lovely, so I will need accommodation total plus security bond as well as a valid photo ID. CG,
Excuse me? We will only be paying accommodation total. Thank you very much.
me, as we had explained to you during the reservation process over the phone, guests intending to pay cash will be required to provide an additional security bond that is refundable upon a departure inspection. This will also provide a credit on your account to use amenities like room service and minibar. CG,
That is bullcrap. Nobody told me that over the phone. We only have enough cash for the accommodation. And a little bit for food. Are you telling me you want my baby to starve?
points to pram laden with bags and blankets with no baby inside. Me, I do apologize if there was somehow a miscommunication. However, I was the one that reserved this room for you and clearly remember explaining our cash policy to you. I also made sure we sent you a confirmation that also had this information. CG,
You're a liar. We never even got a confirmation.
me, I also remember letting you know to call us if you don't receive it within 24 hours as it has important information for you. CG,
So what? Are you going to make my girlfriend and my baby sleep on the street tonight?
me, no, certainly not. I'm sure we can work something out. I asked them how much they have with them and figure I can reduce their bond, but will have to cut off some services, for example no room service, removing minibar and blocking movie channels. This still left them with some money to go to the supermarket to get food. I tell them that we do not normally do this, but I will make an exception, and if they want to eat at the restaurant they will have to pay immediately, no room charges. They agree, so we finish the registration and I inform the restaurant to block their account before I go up to the room to remove their minibar. While I was up in their room taking minibar items out, they come in and start unpacking their bags. I was curious about how much stuff they had in their pram, supposedly on top of their baby. I did not really get a chance to look properly, but noticed that every time they moved the pram, it sounded like there were bottles clinking around under a blanket where the baby should be. I just chalk it up to crazy guests and get my ass out of there, carrying about $100 worth of overpriced minibar product. The first day of their stay seems to go okay. I asked housekeeping if they had been into their room at all, because I was still curious about their mysterious clinking baby. They had their do not disturb sign up the whole day, so they did not know anything. The next day I came in for the evening shift and there were some notes from the restaurant about these guests trying to charge breakfast to their room. Thankfully it was blocked, but apparently the guest became quite irate when their waitress asked them to pay immediately. She had come running over to reception, frantic and asking about this account and what was going on with it. We reconfirmed with her to ask them for payment and not allow a room charge. Apparently the guy then pulled out a big wad of cash to pay before walking off grumbling. I was both surprised and pissed off to hear the guest apparently had more money when I had been so lenient with him. I go and speak with restaurant staff again and ask them to come and get me straight away if there are any more problems with this guest. No more than 2 hours later, another waitress comes running over to me frantic because a drunk guest is yelling at them and would like me to help. I go over and find my favorite guest red in the face with bourbon on his breath and going off about not being able to charge to his room. CG:
You effing don't know how to do your effing job. I'm a effing guest here. This is my room number.
Slams keys down on counter.
Charge my effing room.
Me: Excuse me, may I ask you why you are speaking to our staff like this? CG:
These effing people cannot do their effing jobs right.
Before I can respond, he storms off with his keys back to his room. By this point, I am seeing red. I've been lenient with this a-hole and he turns around and screams racist profanities at some of the sweetest and most gentle people I know. I go back to my desk and pick up the phone to call his room. I have to call about 3 or 4 times before he finally picks up. CG:
What?
Me: Pack your bags immediately. I'm evicting you from the hotel. If you have not been departed within 1 hour, I will be contacting the police. CG:
For what? For having dinner? We've been getting treated like second-class citizens ever since we got here.
Me: I was very clear with you on arrival that I was making an exception letting you check in without a full bond. You have repeatedly ignored advice when it came to our policies and you agreed that you would pay the restaurant directly for meals. Now you have made a hostile environment for our restaurant staff to operate in and disgusting racist comments are the last thing I would ever tolerate here. Pack your bags. CG:
You cannot kick us out. We have a baby with us.
Now I had spent their entire stay skeptical on whether or not this couple actually had a baby with them. They never requested a cot and the pram they had with them certainly was not an acceptable bed for a baby. So I decided to take a gamble and call them out on it. Me: Unless your baby's name is Jack Daniels, I sincerely doubt the pram full of alcohol bottles you brought with you contained an actual child. You have 1 hour. I slam the phone back down and I am seething from the adrenaline rush I get every time I have to confront a guest. I go and ask the restaurant for the dinner dockets they were trying to room charge and post them to their accounts so I can use the small cash bond I took from them on arrival. I call them again after half an hour. They would not pick up the phone at first to remind them that they had 30 minutes remaining. CG:
F off.
Slams phone down. I call police assistance and let them know I may need some assistance with an eviction in about half an hour. The time rolls by and lo and behold, the angry drunk man and his equally drunk girlfriend arrive in the lobby area with their babyless pram, this time the bottles of alcohol shamelessly on display. By this time the police are waiting outside in case I have any problems, so I ask them to hold the couple there while I inspect their rooms for damage. Miraculously, the rooms are fine and their bond covered the dinner dockets they had, so the hotel did not end up losing any money. The icing on the cake is that as soon as the couple walked out the door, they had all their open liquor bottles, at least 2/3, confiscated by police because we are in a dry zone of the city. I'm not sure where they went, but I slept well that night, knowing I did not kick any babies out onto the street. I gotta be honest, in this story I did not really understand why the couple pretended to have a baby in the first place. It did not seem to give them any advantage anyway. Also, that is the first time I'm hearing that cities in the US have so-called dry zones, or actually wherever this story takes place, but I assume the US. But anyway, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much. Guest forgot their keys. It is a slow day, really slow. So when I hear somebody pull at the side door and it does not open, I prepare myself to start my next guest interaction with a few angry questions about why the front door is not labeled, how come you don't have a sign, how were we supposed to know where the front was, standard questions I encounter here. I get up to the front desk and see a little old man absent-mindedly walk past, headed down the hallway. Oh, he's already in. I go to sit back down, but he turns around too, comes to the desk. He asks for a room key and I ask for photo ID, standard stuff. He shows it to me in his wallet and I get a new key made.
Couldn't knock on the door, gotta be really sneaky,
he said, pulling one hand out of his jacket.
Got a surprise for my wife.
This little old man holds out a snowball already getting too shiny and wet from melting and winks at me. I stutter out something like, she won't see it coming. Because I'm laughing and he waves and chuckles as he speeds down the hallway, snowball tucked in his pocket. I did not hear any screaming or breaking glass, so I think the prank was well received. Hopefully. By the way guys, I'm curious, how is it for you? Do you sometimes still get snow around November or December? Here where I live, around 10 years ago, every Christmas we had a lot of snow, but nowadays we are really lucky if we get any snow at all in December. It's either a curse or a blessing, I would say. A nice little post for once. We have a long-term guest who has been staying with us for 4 years. He's from out of state, works here during the week and goes home on the weekend. He just came to the front desk looking for me on his way out the door to go to work. He handed me a card and gave me a hug and Merry Christmas wishes since I am on vacation starting tomorrow and he is gone the next 2 weeks for his vacation. Told me that he appreciates everything that I and a couple of others do for him, especially in light of the fact that he is away from his family so much and that I was the reason that he was staying with us again. We had a management change twice in just a few months and the first GM deleted all discount rates for businesses we deal with, so this guest went somewhere else. I got him his original rate back. I responded that, for us, it was so nice to have a familiar, smiling face to greet at check-in/check-out. You know, instead of a Karen. Did not open the card until after he left, thinking it was just a Christmas/thank you card. Inside was a crisp, shiny, new $100 bill. Merry ho-ho to me. Guys, I'm curious, if you have ever worked in the service industry, what was the largest tip you have ever received? Have you ever gotten any $100 bills? Let us know in the comments. The next story was posted by TimeLady381 on our own subreddit r/ripestories and this story is concerned with FHOA. The story is titled Grandma Beats the HOA. This happened back in 2014, so my grandmother at this time was 70 years old. She had owned her home for the last 40 plus years, still does. She had just been diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer and was going through a hard battle with chemo and was trying to rest at home when some random group of people she did not recognize showed up at the front door now. One thing I should mention is my grandmother's home is over 100 years old now. It was built in the early 1900s, so the front entrance to the home has no road connection to it and the only way my grandmother has to park is in the large garage. She had put it on the side of the property back in the early 90s as you have to travel up a dirt road to gain entrance to get to the property without impeding traffic on the main road. Anyway, my grandmother was very confused to who these people were as she did not recognize them. They proceeded to try to give her a college textbook sized stack of paper. She was not even able to lift herself as it weighed like 15 pounds and said they were a new HOA group in the neighborhood who had just bought most of the homes in her neighborhood, and even though they had not bought her home, they wanted her to sign to join them. Now grandma, even with chemo brain at the time, was no fool. She had heard someone bought all the properties around her and she went searching into these HOA laws. She told them she was not interested and to take their book back, that she did not wish to be a part of it. They then crumbled and proceeded to leave for a week before coming back and pestering her again. But now my grandmother is also a feisty woman and she knew our local laws about trespassing, and she called the police and asked that they be escorted off the property and also reported their vehicle for impeding traffic as it was blocking the only road for the area, which had only 2 lanes at the time. Was rebuilt a couple years ago. Last I heard, the HOA went bankrupt there because none of those houses were able to be sold and our city codes are strict about upkeep on homes All these houses were easily 100 plus years old for the area. My grandma has been cancer free now for almost 6 years in March. Well, first of all, congratulations to your grandma for being cancer free. And second, honestly, the more stories I hear about HOAs, they sound more like a mafia than a homeowner association. Actually, I still have not read a single positive comment about HOAs in the whole time I've been already posting these stories. The next story was posted by Stacy Rose and is titled My Friend's Shiny Spine, and it fits the entitled parents category. So I got to witness my friend's shiny spine up close and personal. I always knew she was a tough lady, but I never knew how tough until today. So today I got invited over to my friend's house to play Uno and snack out on cookies and other home-baked goods. Who would pass up free cookies? Not me. I arrived at her house and was greeted at the door by a woman I never met. I told the woman who I was and she invited me in. She yelled to my friend that she had company in a kind of rude manner, but I just let it go. My friend came out and greeted me and told me to come into the kitchen with her after she took my coat and hung it up for me. Right off the bat, the woman demanded to know who I was and why I was there. My friend simply said, "Who she is none of your business. Why she is here is none of your business. This is my home, not yours." And she led me to the kitchen. When we got into the kitchen, my friend's 3-year-old daughter got excited and screamed, "Aunt Stacy!" and jumped up on my lap. I gave her a hug and booped her nose like I always do and asked her if she's a good girl, to which she excitedly said yes. The woman scolded her and said,
"She's not your aunt, don't call her that."
And the 3-year-old, let's call her Molly, not her real name, started to cry. I hugged her closely and said, "I will always be your Aunt Stacy if you want me to be," and she nodded her head yes. The woman got upset, but my friend gave her a look that shut her up. I asked my friend where her husband was and she said that he was out spending time with the boys. That is how she says it when he's spending time with the men of her family. This woman looked at me and rudely said,
"How do you know my son?"
kind of like an accusatory tone. I just looked at her and said, "I met him through Kelsey." Not my friend's real name, but we will use that for the sake of privacy. I went to their wedding, but I did not have the pleasure of meeting you. I'm Stacy. I held out my hand to shake hers. "Nice to meet you." She just looked at my hand and did not bother to shake it. She just made this weird noise. My friend sat next to me and said, "If you're not gonna be polite to my friends, you're gonna leave." The woman looked at her and said,
"I'm your mother-in-law. I have the right to be here. My grandbabies are here."
And Kelsey simply said, "This is my house, my rules, be polite or leave." That woman did not like that at all and said,
"We will see what John has to say about this."
John is not his real name, but you know, privacy. Kelsey just said, "John will back me up because I am his wife. You are his mother, and even though we love you, we do not have to deal with your snotty attitude. Now be respectful to my company or leave." Kelsey's mother-in-law then yelled,
"Are you gonna keep me from my grandbabies?"
which scared Molly and she started to cry. I held her close, then whispered to her to go get her teddy bear if she gets scared. She hopped off my lap and ran upstairs. Kelsey's mother-in-law looked at me and said,
"What did you tell her?"
I just shrugged and said, "I told her to go get her teddy bear if she gets scared. Your yelling scared her and her teddy bear always calms her down." Molly came running back in the room with her teddy bear and this woman yanked the bear out of her arms and threw it across the room. This time Kelsey's 6-year-old son happened to walk into the room and saw it and said, "Grandma, you're rude, I'm telling daddy on you." And he ran over and picked up the bear and handed it to his little sister. Now during all of this, Kelsey just sat there calmly staring at her mother-in-law coldly. I did not know at the time that she had called John and had him listen in on all of this. She had her phone on speaker. We all heard John's voice suddenly say, "Mother, you better be gone by the time I get home. Dad is with me and he's pissed." Then we hear a click. Kelsey just smiled and said, "That's your cue to leave before you make things worse." Molly and little John Jr. were both sitting near me at this time. Molly was hugging her bear and still crying a little. John Jr., again not his real name but you know, was patting his little sister's back, telling her that it will be okay. Molly sniffled a little, then said, "Grandma, Santa is gonna give you coal because you is being bad." I tried not to laugh, but I laughed when she said this. This woman just glared at us all, then said,
"Grandma is going to ask the judge to give you kids to me." Your mommy is the bad one here.
Well, once she said those words, Kelsey got up so quick and screamed, "Out!" and shoved this woman completely out the door. She slammed the door on her face and locked the door behind her. We could hear her outside yelling things, but we could not make out what she was yelling. About 10 minutes later, we hear a car pull in the driveway, then we heard more voices. One was John and the other were two other men yelling at this woman. Eventually, the men came into the house and John said, "Mom tried to tell me everything was your fault, but we all know how crazy she is." "Hi Stacy, sorry you had to witness that. Let me introduce you to my father and my brothers." I met the rest of the family after a few more friends showed up for Uno and snacks. All in all, we had a good time. The father later told me that his wife has gotten crazy after John got married because John was the youngest and she did not want her baby leaving the nest. He did say he does not approve of her actions and will have a long conversation with her when he gets home. The rest of John's family were great. I looked over at Kelsey and said, "It's good to see you have a shiny spine." And we laughed. John said, "Where did you hear that saying from?" So I told him about Reddit. I did ask permission to post this story and they said I could as long as I changed their names. It was the kids that picked out the names for this story. Anyways, that was my front row seat to witnessing a shiny spine. I'm wondering if any person outside of Reddit and especially outside of the wonderful Just No Mother-in-Law subreddit knows the saying, having a shiny spine. Moreover, I'm curious, do you guys ever play any board games? What are your favorite ones? If I'm honest, in the past I loved to play these games, but honestly I get really angry when I lose, so nowadays I don't really play them anymore. Probably a bad character trait, but what can you do? The next story is also gonna be from r/ripe stories and was posted by Acer1. It is titled, "HOA are basically drunk toddlers." To be fair, HOAs originally had some pretty decent ideas. You paid dues and did not have to mow your lawn, clean your gutters or shovel snow. Those were often services that were provided in exchange for the dues. In some places you had access to a community center with an arcade, pool, gym, banquet room, etc. In other words, you actually got something for the money. Unfortunately, like most things, the little bit of power that the officers of the HOA had went straight to their heads. I have never lived under an HOA, but my oldest brother has. He and his wife bought a cookie cutter home in a cookie cutter neighborhood in Southern California. There was no HOA when they bought the house. It showed up one day a couple of years later. He and his wife both worked, so they had not been able to attend the 2 p.m. meetings, imagine that, and neither had most of their neighbors. The next thing they know, they have to pay money monthly for snow removal, yard mowing, pool cleaning and leaf raking. Did I mention this was Southern California? Yeah, not a lot of snow to shovel there. Everyone had to pay the same amount, even those without a pool. My brother had 2 big teenage boys that handled the postage stamp front yard mowing and cleaned the pool. For free, now they had to pay for someone else to do it. In fact, they were prohibited from doing it. They were fined $1,000 for cleaning their own pool before their July 4th party. Would it surprise anyone here to know that one of the HOA founders had a son that had just started a lawn maintenance business and another had a son who started a pool cleaning business, and both companies were hired for those tasks? Probably not. One year, my nephews got their mother a rose bush for Mother's Day. They planted it for her and were fined $500 because no one else had one. They had to transplant it to a pot instead. They still have it. Once they were fined $300 because my sister-in-law had the nerve to put up curtains in the front window that had a red backing to them and could be seen from the street. Only white was allowed. They were fined $500 because they had 3 cars. They also had a 3-car garage, but they were still fined for having excessive cars. They were fined $100 because Amazon left a package on their front porch instead of checking it in at the clubhouse, the house of the HOA president. You know, their own address instead of another address. They were told that they were in violation of HOA policies because they are not allowed to get packages at their own house. The last one was the final straw. My brother took the letter to a friend at work who was married to an attorney. She took it to the local postmaster. Turns out that fining people for getting their mail, many Amazon packages are delivered by the US Postal Service, is actually a federal crime. She also contacted the state's attorney and the IRS in regards to the companies that were performing lawn and pool services. That HOA sort of collapsed about that time. The HOA got hit with a boatload of fines, but by then it did not matter much to my brother and his family. They took their rose bush and moved. If you ask me, it sounds like those crazy HOAs are trying to implement a worrying degree of uniformity, which honestly cannot lead to anything good. To be honest, in some of these stories it seems that the HOA is even above the police. And unfortunately guys, this has to be the last story for today. I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, please don't forget to post some star emojis and also like the video. By the way, as you can hear, I'm still sick and I hope I will be 100% recovered soon. But anyway, I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.